Jim Pike.
Yes,
Welcome to the
hi.
show.
Thank
How
you.
you doing?
Yeah, fine, thanks, Sam.
Good. So, first things first, what were you like as a child?
This was a long time ago. I was born in a council house in a grotty estate in Southampton. Mum and Dad worked in factories. Me and my two brothers, I'm the middle brother. We just played on the streets as kids. Of course, no computers or phones in those days. That was 1955. And that's about it, really. Had lots of friends and just, went to school and learned what I could. England in 1966 when I was 10, early 66, and immigrated to Australia and what they call a £10 POM. So I believe they brought it in the 50s, and they certainly did it in the 60s and 70s, where anybody could go from England to Australia and pay £10, and anyone could go there. So we did that, and it was great. We lived in Melbourne for 3 years, then came home in '9, and I started work. I left school when I was 15, started work straight away as a trainee panel beater and sprayer, but in actual fact I wasn't that. Really what I was an odd job boy, and clean the cars and make the tea and do whatever was necessary. And a position came up in the stores. So I worked for a Renault dealership in Southampton, and I realised that I had a head for numbers, and so I went into the stores and started selling parts for cars, only Renaults at that time. And then my older brother Ron, he invited me to go to work at his place, which was called Ortella Components, and we sold brakes, steering, suspension, clutches, exhausts, batteries, service items, plugs, points, filters, oil, things like that. Then I've had a lot of jobs, actually. I don't want to bore you, Sam, but what did I do? I had a brief spell in the Royal Marines when I was 21, but they kept telling me what to do and I didn't like it because I wanted to tell them what to do.
Mm.
And then I came out the Marines in late 76, and I went to work for a company called Armstrong Auto Parts. Then I went to work for a company called Mayday, still in motor factoring. I was made a director of Mayday very, very quickly. Then I left Mayday in 1982 and set up my own company called Magnum Motor Spares. And we got off to a brilliant start. Cash flow was great. I kept building the stock. But then Unipart came into the market and they were selling parts cheaper than what we could buy them for. And I'd overstocked the company. I'd made a mistake. I'd kept on buying stock, and I had more stock than I had in cash, and that was a problem. Anyway, I sold the company in 88. I went to work for a finance house and learnt the finance industry, mostly leasing and hire purchase. And that could be on cars or commercial vehicles or plant and machinery. And then 1990, I started up my own company called Glenside Finance, and we got off to a really bad start. We were on the edge of closure for 2 years, and times were really, really bad. We were living off our credit cards, and we lost about £40,000 in the first 2 years. Then in the third year, we broke even. And then after about 5 or 6 years, I did something like Dragon's Den. So probably everybody looking at this video has seen Dragon's Den. So I'm going back to around 1997 now. And it wasn't called Dragon's Den, but I stood up in front of 30 millionaires and asked them to lend me some money. And they did. And 5 of them got together and lent me £200,000. So suddenly, in my little finance company, I had some cash. So I lent that out, and then people pay you back, then you lend that out, then they pay you back, then you lend that out. And you get what I call the mushroom effect, and your capital just grows. And every time someone pays you back every month, there's a little bit of profit. So then when I had my own book, suddenly the banks opened their doors to me, and these doors were previously closed. So they were fringe banks. I won't mention any names, but banks that you may not have heard of. And then things grew and grew and grew, and I ran the company for 28 years and sold it in 2018, I think, for a fairly substantial amount of money. You know, not a lot to some people, but to me it was a lot. And that allowed me to buy property again. But even before I did that, I had been buying property when I had my motor factor business. So this was the first house I bought, and I knew nothing. I didn't even know how to put a screw in a wall when I bought that.
See, I love that
And
picture, Jim.
Sorry?
It's just, I love that picture.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. The sort of just captures that moment in time.
That's what I turned it into. So I was 29, about 29. It was about 1984. So there we are. So when I bought that, the neighbours, that was like that for many years. And the neighbours came by and said, we're so glad that someone's buying that and they're doing something with it because it's bringing down our street. So that took me 6 months of part-time work to do that, and I hired in the experts when I needed them. But as I got further into the job, it started to look very, very nice. And the same neighbours would come by and say, your house looks so good, it's showing ours up now, ours looks bad. So I thought that was quite good. Yeah, it was. So the weird thing was that house wasn't actually on the market. So I was just driving by it one day, didn't even know it was there, and I saw it and I stopped the car and I thought I can make some money out of that. And this is where the entrepreneurial flair comes in, because there are, you know, 1 million people probably drove by that house and I was the only one that stopped. Anyway, so I knocked the neighbours' doors and I said, do you know anything about this house? And they said, yeah, there was a fire there one day and there was a lady and she's moved away and we don't know where she's gone. So I went back to my motor factor business. So I had that in 1984 and I was chatting to the girl in the office there. And this is the weirdest thing, because she said, I know that property and I know the name of the person that owns it, and I'll make some contacts and I'll come back to you. So she came in the next day and she said, right, this is the name of the lady. She's gone into a mental institution. This is her solicitor's details. So I phoned him up and I said, I want to buy it. And he said, well, I can't sell it to you. I've got to put it on the market. So I said, okay. I said, who are you going to sell it with? He said, Fairley Robertson. I said, okay. So I phoned up Fairley Robertson and I said, I understand you're selling this bungalow. And the salesman said, no. So I'm thinking two things. Either he doesn't know about it or he's going to sell it to his mate, the builder. So anyway, he said, leave it with me, I'll phone you back. He phoned me back later. He said, we are selling that bungalow. I said, how much do you want for it? He said, £15,000. So I said, I'll buy it. I didn't have 15,000.
15,000.
No. So it was cheap. Even then it was cheap. But I used to be in the Round Table, and if anybody's watching this, you want to look up Round Table because it is a great organisation to be in for young men. So anyway, a guy in the club was the manager of the Halifax Building Society, and he also was called Jim. And I phoned him up and I said, Jim, I've just seen this bungalow and I want to buy it. He said, well, how much money do you want? I said, I want 25,000 quid. I want 15,000 to buy it and 10,000 to renovate it. He said, okay, come in and fill in the forms. And I did that and I got the money. I made a big mistake. So what I did was I went round the bungalow and I said, right, kitchen, £1,000, carpets, £1,000, plastering, £1,000, roof, £1,000, stairs, £1,000. I put a room in the loft, so we needed stairs. And I came up with 10 grand. Anyway, it didn't cost me 10,000 quid. It cost me 27,000 to renovate it. So it took 6 months part-time. I hired in the experts when I needed them, the bricklayers. We took it down to a bare brick shell inside. So there are some inside pictures. I don't know if they show up very well. So that's inside, looking up through the roof.
Yeah,
and we took it down to that. It's just nothing, no roof completely, just brick and everything. And so I hired in the trades as I needed them. There's me putting windows in when I was young and had a moustache.
Yeah, love it, love it.
I know there's a picture of here on the roof as well. Anyway, so I sold it for £58,000 and I made around about 17,000. Forgive me if my maths are not quite right. And I sold it through the same estate agent that I bought it through.
Yeah,
And it
that's
sold
always
instantly.
good to do. If
Yeah,
somebody brings you a deal or you buy something from them, try
yeah,
to put the sale through them as well. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I made a lot of money in 6 months part-time work, did it in evenings and weekends, and I thought this is good. I'll buy some more, right? So I found another house and I spent 6 months doing that and I didn't make any money on that. Then I found another one that had subsidence, and that was a big one, and I made a lot of profit on that. I made about 35,000 on that one, and then I lost everything because a lot of people viewing this clip may not remember this, but there was a recession that hit in the early 90s that lasted for years. And what I'd done was I'd sold my motor factor business and I'd made some money on the other property and I had quite a lot of cash in the bank. And I thought, right, I'm on a roll. And I found this big old Victorian house in Southampton and it was just one property, but I saw the opportunity to convert it into 4 studio flats. And I bought it and I got the permission to do it, but I had to fight the council to do it because they didn't want it. And it took 6 months to go through planning and I had to lobby the councillors and do all that. And the funny thing was that all the Labour councillors voted against it and all the Tory councillors voted for it. And I don't know why Labour has got something against, it was a big old house, nobody wanted it. But I turned it into 4 studios, which people needed. So the idea was to make some money. Anyway, the recession came along. And the recession lasted for many years. And it was at one point, interest rates and mortgages went up to 15% in around 91, 92. And, there were people committing suicide. I couldn't sell my flats because that was the plan, to flip them. So I rented them out to what they called DSS tenants at that time, which today are people on benefits. There's nothing wrong with being on benefits. A lot of people do it. A lot of people need it. Nothing wrong at all with that. But nonetheless, I had some bad tenants. I also had some good ones, but the bad ones were really bad. So I had it for 8 years and it was such a rotten experience that I sold it. And I sold the whole lot, 4 studio flats, for about £85,000. 2 years later, I could have sold the flats for £85,000 each.
How did you feel?
Big mistake, and I lost about £70,000. So I'm now into the 90s, of course. So it's around, I don't know, 96, 97. And £70,000 was a lot of money then, and it's a lot today, but then it's like, maybe £250,000 today or something in today's terms. So I vowed never to be a landlord again. By this time I was working in finance and I was about to set up my own finance company and carried on and did that. Anyway, I sold the company, as I said earlier, and had some cash. Didn't know what to do with the cash. You can't leave it in the bank because you've got 2 problems with that. If you leave it in the bank, you've got inflation eating it away and you've got spending. You're going to spend it. I wasn't getting a pension or anything at that time. So I bought some properties and I now have 7 buy-to-lets and I have 4 mortgages. I've actually just put one of them on the market because I don't like what the government's doing with the Renters Reform Bill. Sorry, Renters' Rights Bill, isn't it now? So, there are so many issues with that don't suit landlords. The pets thing. I mean, who says, who is they to tell me that my tenants are allowed to have pets? They're my properties. I'll do what I want, not what they want. And, and the tax thing and the extra stamp duty that we have to pay and everything else. So I'm nearly 70 and I'm starting to wind down a little bit and I've got 1 property on the market. So during all that time, I had to fight cancer as well. So in December 14, I had a really, really bad sore throat. And I was ever so ill with it. It must have been more than that. It must have been a virus or something. And my wife kept saying to me, go to the doctors. And I kept saying, no, I'll be better tomorrow. I'm not going. And every day she said, go to the doctors. Anyway, 2 weeks went by. And I said, do you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm not getting better. So I went to the doctor, and I said, a young female doctor, she was really good. And I said, look, I've come about my sore throat, but actually it's a little bit better today. But while I'm here, can I talk about something else? So she said, yeah. I said, so I've had a little bit of blood coming out my bottom from time to time. And she said, I'm more worried about that than I am your throat. So she sent me to Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth, and I had a procedure, and they diagnosed me with stage 3 bowel cancer.
Gosh.
So I had to go private to have an operation because the NHS told me to go home and wait for a letter. So I'm not the sort of person that does that, because the letter never comes, does it?
No.
So I went private to have that done. I had a private scheme. And I had my operation, and 2 years went by after that. That was in July 15. 2 years went by, and my wife kept saying to me, shouldn't they be checking up on you? And I said, well, I don't know. And I saw the doctor one day. I said, shouldn't I be having a checkup? And he said, yeah. He said, haven't you had any? I said, no. So they sent me for a scan, and they found I had lung cancer. Then it spread from my bowel to my lung. So I had an operation to remove the lung cancer. In between the two cancers, I had pneumonia, and I was on chemo a lot and radiotherapy. And of course, when you're on chemo, your immune system is low. So I didn't know I was going to get pneumonia. Apparently there's a jab for it, but the NHS didn't offer me a jab. I had no idea you could get, I was going to get pneumonia, but I did. And I was ill in hospital for 10 days with that. It was really bad. And so right now, I've got 10 lots of income. I've got 7 rents coming in every month. I've got, me and my wife have got our state pensions. I've got a small private pension as well. On my wall here in front, you can't see it, but I've got a list of all my expenses every month, and I've got a list of all my income every month. So it's right in front of me, and I'm really, really sad. I keep a book, and in my book I write everything, all my finances, all money that goes into my bank and all money that comes out of my bank goes through that book. And I've got all those going back 40 years, and I can look in there, and I know what every single penny is for. I scrutinise every bill that I get, particularly from utility companies, and I check and double check everything that I do financially. So that's just the way I am, and I've made a few pounds over the years, and life is good at the moment, touch wood.
Good.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was rattling on a bit there, Sam. Do you want to ask
That's
me anything?
fantastic. Yeah, I think it's brilliant to know what you were like growing up, and then all the way through your careers and right up until the present day. And there was some real great nuggets there that I'd love to touch on. And we'll start with the most recent one. You mentioned the book that you keep all your spending in and all your income in.
Yeah.
What importance do you put on that? Because a lot of people, they'll just spend money here, spend money there. But how do you keep so disciplined to keep such a thorough record?
My older brother suggested that I do it many, many, many years ago. Sadly, he's passed away now. And I thought it was a good idea at the time. And I still get paper bank statements. A lot of people do their banking online, but I have my paper statements. And the reason I do that is that if ever anything goes wrong with the banking system, like what if someone invents one super virus that wipes out all the banks, I can say, there's my bank statements, that's how much money I've got, and there's my book, that proves it. So I believe in being very, very thorough, and some people look for problems in their business lives. I look for solutions. So I have a solution there just in case a problem comes up. My solution is there. I'm armed and ready to go if there's an issue with the bank. So I've just always done it. I tried to get my son and my daughter to do it, but they're not interested. It's all online, Dad. you know. And I've got a granddaughter as well, and I'm hoping to get her to do it. So we'll see. I don't know of anybody else that does it, you know,
Yeah, it's a
but it
good
works for
idea.
me.
And I
Yeah, it works
think
for me.
I think by having it, it makes the numbers real. Whereas if they're just on a screen, it is just numbers. But when you
Just a
actually
number.
look at it physically, like spending cash, you know what you're physically handing over.
So when I get my bank statement through the post, and indeed I'm online, of course, with my bank, and I do a bank reconciliation almost daily, but I also reconcile my paper bank statement to my book. And on 2 or 3 occasions, people have taken money out of my bank that I don't know or realise. I don't know what it's about. And I know that because it's not in my book. And that's how I've picked up on it. So it can pick up scams as well. I believe some of these scammers take a little bit, they take £3 or something, and then if they get that, they take 100, then they take 500, and before you know it, you've lost thousands. So I'm watching out for stuff like that all the time. I'm constantly looking. I am.
Yeah,
So
that's really good and really top tip there. And if we go back to your childhood, moving
yeah,
to Australia, how do you
yeah,
think that impacted you as a person? Because that's such a big move at 10 years old in
yeah.
1966. How did that affect you, whether it was good, whether it was bad?
Well, Australia then wasn't the place that it is today. It was a bit rough and ready, you know, badly made up roads. The answer how did it affect me is I don't really know. I don't know if I became a different person by moving to Australia. You know, if mum and dad says you're going to Australia, you go to Australia, don't you? You know, and if they say we're going home, you're going home. So Australia's my second home now. I used to have a house there. I surprised my wife one day. I bought a block of land near Perth and built a 5 bedroom house on it. And she didn't know anything about it. And we went there for one of our holidays and I took her there and she said, "What are we doing here?" And I said, "I just want to show you this." And she said, "Why are you showing me this?" And I said, "Well, it's ours." She said, "What do you mean it's ours?" And I said, "Well, I bought it. I built it." It took me a year to do it, mind. And she was a bit upset at the time because what she saw was debt and commitment. What I saw was lovely holidays every year in a beautiful part of the world. And sadly, I got ill 3 or 4 years after, you know, with the cancer, and I sold it. And that's when I sold my company as well. So we still go to Australia now. And we're going there again in February, staying with friends this time. But it's really, really nice to have your own place there. Really nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's a lovely country. I've been there, and if it was closer, I'd live there.
Yeah.
If you were to put the lifestyle, the weather, the food, the people in Europe, I'd quite happily live there. It's just a bit too far for me.
Yeah, the flight is horrible. And if you go business class, it costs you a fortune. So you know, another reason that I'm worth a few pounds today is that I watch every penny I spend. So wherever I go cattle class instead of business or first class. I'm very careful about what cars I buy. I make clothes last me a long time, whereas a lot of people just go out and buy clothes willy-nilly every day. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't gamble. If anybody does any of those things, and I don't mean, when I say drink, I don't mean, you know, have a beer or have a glass of wine, I mean drink a lot. If anybody does any of those 4 things, you know, they're never going to amount to anything because all their spare cash, my brother Ron, he smoked every day for 50 years, a packet of cigarettes every day. He spent, I don't know how much money that is, 50,000 quid or something, or I don't know. He spent on cigarettes.
Yeah, I
And most
mean,
of that's tax, isn't it?
yeah, nowadays I think I mean, I don't smoke, never smoked, but if it's 12 quid for a pack of fags, 2 fags
Is
a
it?
day, 25
12.
quid a day, say, it soon adds up.
Yeah, I got a friend who smokes cigars. A cigar is £18, one cigar. I remember when £18 was a week's wages.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah. So I watch every penny that I spend. I do. But I do have some fun as well. I play guitar. I'm in a band. I ride motorbikes. I used to race bikes. I did club racing for 8 years. I've got 4 motorbikes now. So there's me saying I watch every penny I spend. There's me saying I've got 4 motorbikes, and I've got 3 guitars and 3 amps. So you've got to have fun as well. You've got to live your life, because there's no point in just doing work. You've got to have some playtime as well, And I've got a wonderful family, lovely wife, 2 lovely grown-up children. My kids are older than you, probably. Well, I'm sure they are. And my granddaughter, she's 12 and she's beautiful as well. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Please ask anything you want to, Sam.
Yeah, so going onto your family, how important has family been for you in growing your wealth and then maintaining it? Have they had an influence?
Not an influence. I mean, my wife's always there and she's great and she's lovely and loyal and, everything else. She hasn't really helped in any of the businesses. I've done it all myself. So what I've found over the years is that to be successful, you've got to have what I call the entrepreneurial spirit, okay? So you've got to be the one that drives by the old house and sees it and spots an opportunity, rather the one that just drives by and keeps going. And so I've done that in my businesses as well, my motor factor business and my finance company. And, I saw an opportunity, but it's more than that. You've got to see the opportunity and you've got to make it work. You've got to do it. Nobody gave me anything in my whole life. I've worked for everything that I've got. I've had hard times, don't get me wrong. In the early days of Glenside, it was really, really bad. I said earlier that I was on the edge of going bust every day. We had to take lodgers in at home and get 25 quid a night to give them bed and breakfast to help pay the mortgage and stuff, and the credit card debt racked up, and it was absolutely dire. And the thing that really saved me was the investors coming in, those 5 people. And because before they came, I owned 100% of nothing. But they came in, they took some shares in the company and they took interest and dividends and things. And then after 6 or 7 years, I bought them out. But when I bought them out, I owned 100% of something much, much larger. So not large by big company standards, but large by small company standards, if that makes sense. So, there was 5 people in the company. So just a small company. Big does not necessarily mean beautiful.
Yeah, and with those investors coming on board, if somebody is looking to raise investment, raise a bit of finance, or get somebody into the business to provide funding, what would make a business worth investing in? How would you become investable?
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid. I got wind of this thing. It was at Hook Chambers near Basingstoke. And, I think they were called business angels or something. And I heard about it and I thought I wrote a business plan and went along there and asked them to lend me some money. I don't know what made me investable. Certainly one thing helped was that one of those guys lived very local to me. And he was quite wealthy. In fact, all of them were quite wealthy. And, they lent me different amounts of money. One of them lent me 50,000, one of them lent me 20,000, one of them lent me 70,000. And all in all, it was about £200,000. But money was my stock, and I didn't have any stock before they came in. So they came in and lent me some, then I had stock. It's like if you're selling apples, you need a stock of apples to sell them, don't you? So I was selling money, and it worked very well, and we helped a lot of people get cars and equipment and machinery that couldn't get it through normal sources. And then the banks came on board, and the banks lent me money to lend to people that they wouldn't lend to. And mostly it was good. We had some great customers, regular customers. Most of them were good. There was a few really, really bad ones. I can't mention any names, of course, but, some of them were awful. But most of them, 90% of them were really, really good people and good customers. And
Yeah, I think you've got
many
to take the
customers,
rough with the smooth, and
yeah,
if your wins can outweigh your losses, then you're winning. You can't expect to just have it plain sailing all the time.
no, life is not perfect and business is not perfect. You've got to work at it, but
Yeah,
you've got to have the bones of an idea, or an opportunity, but you've got to make it work. You know, in my case, you know, nobody gave me anything. Nobody said, "Why don't you do this, Jim, or do that, Jim?" You know, I spotted opportunities and made them work. So that's what entrepreneurs do. And if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs in the world, I bet you most of them dropped out of school or college or university early. And I'm not saying people should do that, but I bet you most of them did because they could see opportunity out there and they couldn't do it while they were at school. So, you know, I left at 15 with nothing, no exams. I could read, write, and do my sums. That's it. I'm working. That's all I need. Don't need algebra. Don't need transpositions. Don't need all the science stuff. Don't need any of that. Just need to be able to work one of these. I've had that
yeah.
for about 30 years.
So yeah, I think it's brilliant being able to spot the opportunities, and entrepreneurs want to be able to do their own thing. And if you're in school and sixth form and university, maybe we feel constrained by the system and being told this is what time you arrive, this is what you need to learn, this is when you have your break times, and it just doesn't do well for the entrepreneurial brain, I don't think.
I'm a little bit of a rebel as well. So when I started my first job at the age of 15, I worked for this Renault garage, Park Motors, and you know, I was odd job boy. And we were having a tea break one day, and the workshop manager said to me, "Make me a cup of tea, Nipper." I said, "Make it yourself." He said, "Make me a cup of tea, Nipper." I said, "Make it yourself." And he kicked me in the stomach. 15 years old, right? This bloke kicked me, and it wasn't hard and I wasn't hurt, but he did it nonetheless. And if he'd have said please, I'd have done it. I'd have made him a cup of tea. But I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, if you were asked nicely, it changes it, doesn't it? The dynamic of
Yeah,
the conversation.
one little word, please. You know, and that's why I think maybe I wasn't suited to the Royal Marines. You know, it just wasn't right. You know,
Yeah.
so I opted out. Half the troop opted out. They did. And I think the ones that opted out were the ones that could do something outside.
Hmm.
But having said that, the Royal Marines are a fantastic fighting force in this country. So, you know, I'm pleased they're there, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I think we've got to be thankful and acknowledge the amazing people within the armed forces, and what they actually do, and the fact that I can't do it. I'd hate to do it. So yeah, fair play to you anyway, Jim. Even if you did leave, at least you did it, and then figured out that you didn't quite enjoy it like you thought you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So beyond financial wealth, how else would you define success in one's life?
Bloody hell. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know. I'm very happy in what I do. I'm content. I'm successful. The thing is, even now I'm thinking about winding down, I'm always looking for opportunities in doing something because, you know, not everything has been thought of. I mean, look at Velcro. That came around in the late 60s. The bloke who invented that was brilliant, wasn't he? He became a millionaire because of that. You know, simple idea, but nobody else had thought of it. There's so many things that are yet to be invented, or so many services maybe that could be done. You know, that's what entrepreneurs do. They never stop exploring and thinking about new opportunities or ways of making money. But I am slowly coming out of the property business, and it's mainly because of the government and councils. So everybody hates us landlords, but everybody needs us, don't they? But don't stop them hating us, because the
Yeah, that's
councils haven't
right.
got enough properties. They've sold them all off cheap. And they, they need to work with landlords, and they're fighting against us all the time. I've got a problem now with Fareham Council, and I want to sell one of my other properties, and I spoke to a lady in Fareham Council, and she's, I want to serve a Section 21 on the tenant, but he's poorly, and I don't want to chuck him out while he's poorly. He's very ill, in fact. And I spoke to a lady in the council, she said, we're going to advise him to stay, and you'll have to take him to court. It'll cost you thousands in legal fees, and it will take you months or even years to get rid of him. And we're going to tell him to stay until the bailiffs turn up and knock on the door. Well, the problem with that is that, I understand tenants need rights. We need rights as landlords as well. And at the moment, Section 21, we still have the right to use, of course. But in that fight to get that tenant out, he's going to end up with a county court judgment. And when he gets a county court judgment, he's never going to be able to rent anywhere else, because everybody else are tightening up and they're only taking first class grade A tenants. And if you've got CCJ, it doesn't work. Never going to rent anywhere. So the councils think they're doing their tenants a favour by telling them to stay, but in actual fact they're making things worse, and they don't realise it.
Yeah, there needs to be some, I hate talking in cliches, but joined up thinking. Departments need to talk to each other. They need to understand it from other people's points of view and look at the bigger picture. There could be an option to move your tenant into another property, but they don't want to look at that until the 11th hour, i.e. the tenant being made homeless. And it just doesn't make sense.
No, and it's like the councils and the government are fighting landlords, and they need to stop fighting us. They need to work with us, because we're trying to help as well. And yes, we're making some money, and that's what we're here for. But we're also providing accommodation for people that can't buy their own properties or can't rent elsewhere. So, and a lot of landlords are leaving and selling up, and I completely understand it. The one that's currently on the market will settle 3 of my 4 mortgages, and they're coming to the end of their 5 years fix in March. So, and they're going to double or more. So I need to sell something to settle those. Mm-hmm. So luckily I've got a vacant one at the moment. Really, really nice 2-bed house. So it's only just gone on the market. It's only been a few days.
Yeah, it's important. Do you think having a property portfolio has been to creating the wealth that you've got?
Undoubtedly, it's helped. So I have excess income every month coming in, quite a large amount. And what I've been doing is saving up on the side to help me mitigate those mortgages when they come to the end of their fixes. So, it's helped a lot. And when I'd sold my company, if I just put the money in the bank and left it there, a lot of that would have been gone now. And what I've done is I took that cash and converted it into bricks and mortar, and then the bricks and mortar provided me with rental income, which provides me with a living, but I've still got the cash because it's tied up in the bricks and mortar. So if it'd gone in the bank and I'd left it there, I'd be spending it. I don't know how much I would have spent over the last 6 years, but who knows? A lot. A couple of 100,000? I don't know.
Yeah, it's great because you put your money into a property so you can use the deposit, you can get borrowing, and the property goes up in value over time. So it's a win-win-win, really.
Yeah, it is. And, I've got some really good tenants. I've heard some horror stories, but all my tenants have been very, very good. Recently, when I did it back in the 80s and 90s, I had a lot of bad ones, but the ones these days have been really good.
Yeah, good. I think that might be because nowadays everything is logged, everything you do, and referencing is probably a bit more thorough and easier to do for companies. It's all online. It's harder to get away with things. Yeah. So to finish off, Jim, what is the most important lesson that anyone watching or listening to this can take away in how to become a millionaire?
Okay, I never use the word millionaire, but I have achieved that and beyond. So check everything. If you get a good idea, make it work. Whatever it is, do it. And so many people just, come up with ideas and do nothing, Just get out there and do it, and be resilient and be determined. And I always focus on something. So if that's my goal, then I aim for that and I disregard everything else. I just zero in on that. And like my finance company and my manufacturer, and now my property, let's make it work. And I think ahead as well. If I do this, what happens over there? And what about that? And it's like playing chess. I don't know if you play chess, but you make a move and you think, if I move my knight there, what's my opponent going to do? You just think ahead all the time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love the fact that just if you get an idea, go and do it. And actually, who really deep down truly cares if it fails? Just move on to the next one. Get an idea, try it. Get an idea, try it.
Believe me, I've had failures and I've had really, really bad times. But right now, it's good.
Fantastic.
It should be for the rest of my days, I hope.
Yeah, and hopefully a lot more days to come.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks, Jim.
All right, you're very, very welcome. Okay.